boards that are there at Westmar, those are hugely beneficial because you can go play by yourself.
Right.
There's a net line painted there, and they are used so you can go and just practice your ground strokes alone, and that is hugely beneficial because you can't always find someone to go hit with you. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they can go.
You have to.
Go ahead,
So they
Scott.
can hear it.
Or do you want to just? I'll just go real quick.
Okay.
You know what, it's the same thing. You know what. Yeah.
So I'm Shane Setzman at 811 East Valley Drive, and I've been an avid tennis player since I was 7 years old, so quite a while. The preferred tennis courts to play on in Lamar's, Iowa is Westmar's tennis courts. If I had a nickel for every ball that I've hit there, either on the court or against that board, I'd have enough money right now that we could put up an 8-court facility. Some of them covered and everywhere, but I'm sad to hear that I was out of town when the article came out in the paper, so I'm just sad to hear that it's even considered to get rid of them because that is the place to go. The boards are essential for kids to learn. For even me, I go there, hit against the board if I can't have somebody that wants to go hit. I have recently spoken to a tennis professional about the possibility, they operate out of town, but if they could come here, because I have a half a dozen 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds that would love lessons, and that was a recent conversation, so I need to kind of go back and revisit that conversation with them here after reading the article. But these courts are, like I said, the preferred place to go play in town. I know there's other options, but if there's nobody on that court, that's where we're going, and I think all those details were discussed as to why. We've also recently, the last 2-3 years, we've done instruction for the YMCA for plenty of kids. I think we had 8 or 9 at the last session that we did out there. So I just hope that you give some consideration to keeping them, but in addition to that, we're in Iowa weather here, so they're only going to get used over the winter, and they are ready for resurfacing. So that's really all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Circle back.
Yes, I'll circle back. As far as resurfacing tennis courts, that's a whole nother issue. In tennis, if you don't play a lot of tennis, surface makes a big difference. For most of you, probably none of you play tennis, so you're not familiar. But it's quite a process. So yeah, we have these little small cracks and things like that. But honestly, I mean, if you're going to do it right, the courts do need to be surfaced properly because they're not in good condition. Yeah, we'll take what we have just so we don't get rid of them. But in reality, they really need to be done by a true professional firm that comes in. It's quite the process, and it is expensive. I mean, we'd be delighted just to keep them the way we are. I'm just saying, we'll take whatever we get. But in the future, if you choose to redo it, it really needs to be done by a true, not like a road construction crew or somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. So if it's done well the first time, they will last a lot longer. So it'd be something to entertain if you choose to keep them. At least get a bid from somebody that does it professionally. That's my opinion.
One quick question, what is this surface?
Well, we call it a hard surface, but there's
Is it a rubber mat?
Well, they have all kinds of different underlayments that they put on them. They call like deco turf. There's a whole host of names, not to get into the weeds, but like on a professional level, all these different courts are different, like on the big time level. So they're all different with different speeds and different nuances in the game, which this meeting is not about, but highly variable. And they also, would help on how to do it properly. That's just a thought that I would throw out. And I'm sure we'd be happy to find people that could assist in bringing that forward in the future, if that's a possibility. But if we just keep them, I'm happy. Thank you.
Thanks.
I believe the contractor that did the courts out at Municipal last year was a contractor that does tennis courts.
Lance Sitzman of Lamar's. Just for a little humor too, who was the first person to download to a tablet? Moses. So I'm gonna kind of jump around here, kind of maybe across the US, but you know, when you do try to bring people into Lumars, and I will use Sioux City a little bit too, because now they've done some huge indoor courts, but for example there, and I mean it's the same here, if you try to hire people and there's tennis here, they'll more than likely come, but they did just, I think Mercy just hired a surgeon down here. He moved his whole family here from Florida, and he's got 3 kids. It's incredible, and he moved here because he's close to Sioux Falls for the tournaments. But that's the difference you can probably get in people where you have tennis around too. Because I know Floyd Valley Hospital's been looking for doctors at times, and I try to get people to come to Mars or Clark, you too, but if you drive them by the courts, they're not too attractive, but they're okay. And Clark, on the court itself, I was thinking they're kind of okay. I mean, I'm like Scott, whatever we got, I'm happy with. But at the one closest to the boards to the south, that court is almost like you're standing on ice that's starting to crack, and it's sinking, so I don't know why it's doing that, but that's sinking there. And then on the north end, there's just one huge crack that Scott can attest to. I can hit every time almost, and it throws him off. But the courts they're pretty bad, but when you're driving, if you're driving by the country club courts, you know, someone moving to town, they're fine. Another example, just like in Sioux City, they have players that's played in the US Open in Australia, and then they work like for software companies, and they wouldn't be there if they didn't have that. Same with another husband and wife that met in Germany. They worked for Microsoft. Microsoft got them back to the US and they go comfortably, and they do most of all the servers for the military to keep the virus out. And they're in Sioux City because of the indoor courts, but that's why I'm saying in general, you need good tennis too. And again, that I'm going on the tennis boards, you have 3, you really got 5 courts there, because most towns, I'll tell you, don't have them, but them things they're great. The outreach too from Lamar's here, you have people like graduated from Lamar's community. There's a boy up there on the Sioux Falls Tennis Association, and he does officiating for the Sioux Falls Tennis Open there in the juniors. You have another girl that was on the tennis boards probably 10 years ago, and I was hitting against the other board, and then we got talking. She says, I'm going to go into tennis. And she's come back from Kansas City. She was doing accounting, and she said, I'm going to move to Florida. And I mean, she just started, and I go, it's going to be a tough thing to get into. But so she moved to Florida, and probably a month later, she's, I think, in Paris, and then she's in Australia, and she's with all the tennis players. She got a job down at the in Florida at the tennis center. So she was helping haul people around the tennis stars, you know, and then after that, they'd take her to, you know, Germany or wherever the players went, and she'd help them out. Now they've recruited her at the USTA Tennis Center in Florida, and she's doing the bookkeeping there, and she's from Lamar's here and a graduate, but the outreach of tennis just goes a long ways throughout. I mean, it's the best advertising, I think, a lot of times you can get. And if you spend that money over 10 years, or there's kids playing there and they're not out driving the loop or maybe getting in trouble, you know, to me that helps a lot too. And then more than likely the pickleball out at the country club, and I'm playing pickleball, I love it, it's just as fun. But more than likely we're probably going to lose another court out there, I would think, because it is growing. And it's more than likely the better place to go if it was to expand. If you did try pickleball at the Westmark courts, and I went to a enclosed place down in Naples, Florida, and they had a tennis court they converted to pickleball, and it was kind of like next to the apartment houses next to Westmark, and the HOA association had about 100 people there complaining of the noise. It's hugely loud. So just say there's 3 courts there and they're full and there's 12 people hitting that ball. It'd be like 12 dogs barking outside the place, but we do need the courts. I mean, we really do. And the tennis in general is
Can I just remind everyone to speak up because it's kind of cutting out there a little bit.
okay, did you hear my joke?
Unfortunately, we did.
So in general, too, the sport of tennis is relatively inexpensive for people to get in. I mean, it's basically a can of balls at $2.50, you know, and maybe a tennis racket from somewhere, but we do need them, I think. So any questions anyone have?
Lance, I was intrigued by the Sioux City article, the clip you sent about the program there. Who spearheaded that?
Okay, so you mean to keep the courts?
No, the one that they built, the center, the
Okay,
South
so
Sioux
how,
City?
yeah, you know, I'm trying to stay more focused on Mars, but the indoor courts anymore is just gigantic. I mean, the kids now, probably Tiffany can tell you, or somebody else told me, but the Lamar's kids now have such a maybe a harder time, because some of these towns have indoor tennis and they're going year-round playing. So, you know, what's the Lamar's kids gonna do? But
And I guess my question only is that was I'm going back to the former mayor, a private or public partnership. A lot of people getting together. I just was curious who spearheaded that.
Okay.
Going to Sioux City.
that was mainly Scott Bieber, an avid tennis player, and he comes up here, he plays all the time. He's ranked nationally throughout, and so he's avid at it. So he went to Sioux City, but Sioux City didn't have any quite land for him, so South Sioux City, Nebraska gave him land to get it going. And then they got some kind of Nebraska permit. Then they did a fundraiser, but the building itself, if you want to know, is about $1 million, but then they had the land too given to them. So right now they have 150 young kids they turn away, they're turning away. And you got adults down there, you can't even hardly get a court time. They got it set up on, you know, a website, and you can't even get a court. But their tennis was like ours, it was quiet, you know, and ours is coming back, and it could be back, but again, I think we used to have 165 members on our USTA tennis team here, or association, so it can come back. But one of the things that helped there, I don't know if you remember Bill and Kathy Jaycox, I think Kathy was on the board, but she was a little go-getter and wanted to have pizza parties, and so we ended up getting adult USTA tournaments here for adults and juniors. So we're also, our courts are kind of registered, our memberships registered in New York. So if you call New York, they got us down. If you go to Naples, Florida, they know where Lamar's is. Just the outreach is just further than I can tell you it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Any other citizens discussion? Okay, we'll move on to the thumbs up award. Any council members with thumbs up award, speak up.
And a thumbs up. I'm thinking about ISG, the contractor that's assisting our steering committee with the community planning process. They and the steering committee will be hosting the public's first opportunity for general input next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, at Lamar's Middle School from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's a come and go kind of arrangement, but coming or during that window of time would give anyone and everyone a chance to see how the plan is taking shape, and there's opportunities for input that is very much needed by the steering committee and our contractors. So I encourage everyone to come participate in that. It's a great big space. It should flow very smoothly, and there's my thumbs up.
Anybody else?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Just a thumbs up to all of our care centers here in Lamar. Good Samaritan, Care Health, and Park Place Estates. I have an opportunity once a month to take communion out
Fine
in
living.
Brentwood. I'm sorry? In Prime Living, and just take communion there. We currently have sisters and sister-in-laws in nursing homes in other communities, and I know that ours, here in Lamar, do take great care for that aspect of our population. So, thank you.
I'll add a thumbs up to you all for coming today and voicing your opinion. Just so you know that we can't act on anything today because we weren't on the agenda for the tennis courts, and we really haven't acted on anything. We just didn't appropriate money to have them surfaced. So, but
Thank you.
if there's any further discussion, we'll be in contact. Anybody else have anything, Mark? Thumbs up?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, personal thumbs up to my wife Brenda for sticking together with me for 40 years. Our anniversary was Sunday the 16th, and for letting me be on this rather lengthy council meeting. Well, I'm on vacation.
Congratulations. Okay, moving on to consent items. Under the consent items, we have an approval of the April 4, 23 regular meeting minutes, a list of bills for period ending 4/14/23, and a monthly financial statement for March of 2023.
Make a motion, we approve consent item 1 through 3.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to action items, building and construction regulations ordinance. So on the April 4, 2023, council approved the first reading to amend the Lamar's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155, Building and Construction Regulations. Nowhere in our current code does it state when a building permit is required. Historically, a permit for a building has only been required only when square footage is added. This change would specify when a permit is required under the following conditions. 1, new construction. 2, adding square footage. 3, modification of any building changing its categorical use. The administration recommends council approve the second reading.
Motion to approve the second reading of ordinance number 978 to amend chapter 155, building and construction regulations of Lamar's Code of Ordinances.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Goodchild,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Sturgeon,
Yes.
Bruns,
Yes.
Wick.
Yes.
Motion carried. Moving on to the Bolton and Menk Inc. Services Agreement. Attached is amendment number 1 to an agreement with Bolton and Menk Inc. to provide wastewater treatment facility study. Council tabled action on the amendment at the March 21st, 2023 meeting until after a public utilities meeting on April 6th, 2023. The original agreement was executed on July 16, 2019, and not to exceed the amount of $110,000. This amendment will add $160,000 to the contract. Administration and the Public Utilities Committee recommend council approve amendment number 1.
I don't know if there's any discussion on that. It was tabled, I believe, just to get through a public utilities meeting that was scheduled to make sure everything was going to proceed. So that's why it's back. This is the next step in the process of design work.
Motion to approve amendment number 1 to an agreement for professional services wastewater treatment facility study with Bolton and Menk Inc. with a total agreement fees not to exceed $270,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to action item 3, land purchase. So the administration and council have discussed the possibility of constructing a new fire rescue station, and if so, the need to purchase land. The city has the opportunity to purchase approximately 2.14 acres along 12th Street Southwest for this possible project. Administration and Chief Shipper recommend that the council allocate $200,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funds towards the purchase of the land.
I have two questions. The first one is, Jacob, where's that account sitting? Balance?
I think we're right around $1 million left.
$1 million?
It's out.
Three questions, and then the second one was, this is one of the approved uses, or, I mean, I know we're pretty loose
Yeah.
on the definition, how we can spend it, so this
Yeah.
fits.
Yeah, this was good.
The third question that I have, that I brought up to Mark Gall before the meeting, was, would it be wise for us to put this off for 2 weeks until after these community input meetings, Mike, Donovan? Just to see if the community has anything to say. This is a question, it doesn't come with a predetermined answer.
So another way of saying that is there something time sensitive about doing this now?
That would be half of it, yeah, and
I
the
don't
other
know,
half.
I don't know if it's time sensitive.
Well, I don't know what the public would say.
I don't either, that's why you give them an opportunity.
Well, I mean, if it was because we had to bond for it, or we had to raise taxes to do it, then I would feel that those comments would be more justified. But if we feel that we need a new fire station, we're using ARPA funds. Now, I don't wanna say it's not tax money, but essentially is. All of the United States, it's not specific to Mars residents that are paying for it. We're not raising taxes. We have this money to at least get the ground. If for some reason plans change on that's where that should be a fire station, then we have land that if we don't need, then we resell it. But I think we have the funds there to at least get the land.
Like I say, it was a question.
So we're not saying if we buy this, we're 100% have to put a fire station?
Well, that's why I worded it the way I did.